All right. What's going on, good people? Hope everybody's having a good Wednesday night. Had a good day, having a good week. We got the one and only Crypto Sensei with us tonight. How are you, brother?
Fantastic, man. Looks like AMMs. We got over the percentage we need, so I'm doing pretty well today.
Yeah, I think what's this supposed to be, February 14th?
Unless something crazy happens, we're on the way, man.
Hopefully, they get a hold 80%, but
Yeah,
I think they will.
I think they will too. It took a while for to get some people to come around, and but we're there.
Yeah. Well, they had to launch 2.01 on the network, and so we'd say I think he's still waiting for everything to make sure it's good. But what do you think about digital identity and cross chain bridge? Do you think those are kind of like a have to go live before we see any institutional adoption?
I feel like these are all pieces, right, of a puzzle that you really need to complete the whole puzzle, right? And obviously, some pieces are going to be more impactful than others, but at the end of the day, this is just kind of part of the adoption cycle and what you need to make all of this stuff work properly. So, it'll all work out in the end, but I'm sure there's some things that may not be as important, but AMMs, clawback, some of these things are very important, as well as being able to bridge and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What do you think? So we'll have to have the digital identity component for the AMMs, because that seems like an investment contract to me, man. Like, if you're going to stake and pool assets together, you're probably going to have to, be compliant. I hope we'll see if this works out this way or not. Most people believe you're going to have to put your XRP into the pools, and then it puts you at some risk, right? Because if you have, let's say, you put XRP in at $1 and it goes to $2, you would lose half that appreciation because only half the pool's XRP. My hope is that there's a way that you can lock the XRP in escrow and then delegate that liquidity to the pool and potentially provide liquidity to pools that don't even have XRP in them. Don't know if that's going to be capable. I don't know if that's going to be possible. I think you need some of the inherent attributes of the asset to be able to facilitate liquidity on both sides and work as the DEX is intended. But we'll see. Arthur Brito and David Schwartz are pretty smart guys, and I'm sure that they've probably come up with a solution that works well.
And I'm sure there's a lot of things that we're not even talking about or that we know about that are kind of in the works behind the scenes, right? That's the kind of one really cool thing about crypto. Tomorrow we could find out about a whole new thing that we are going to be able to do, and we just hadn't known about it before. So, it's very exciting. I think, when it comes to like my DMs and talking with community members about XRP, and I think a lot of people they don't realize that adoption takes time, right? When you're moving an entire financial system from what it was for decades to this new digital, T+0, right? Same day instant settlement, right? All of this stuff, there's a lot of kinks that need to be worked out. There's a lot of approvals that need to be done. And it just takes time. And I know a lot of people don't like hearing that, but I consider when I own something like XRP, it's something that I'm going to own for a very long time, right? Like decades, right? Or, depending how long I live, but it's something that, I'll leverage, go take out loans on it. I'll want to keep as much as I can for as long as I can, right? And I just think people need to have that mindset when you're investing in an asset like XRP, that, it's not your meme coin that's going to 100x tomorrow, but when it does go, it's going to be life-changing, and you definitely want to be around for that. You don't want to sell too short and get lose out on that opportunity, right? So we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, if it's adopted at scale the way that Ripple's discussed, and it becomes I don't want to say the global reserve currency, but a bridge currency that allows other global reserve currencies to be interoperable and swapped easily. It's a very prized asset, and seems like it would be riskless to me. And so, a tier one asset in the banking system makes a lot of sense. And to your point, if you're able to leverage that asset at a very favorable interest rate, while it continues to appreciate because more value is being moved on the network. Yeah, I mean, it's like the ideal scenario. And I think banks and governments see this as their way out of the problem that we're in. So it's a solution. We'll see if it ends up being the one they take or not, but I'm confident in it.
You take a look around the world, right? And you have this really big narrative of de-dollarization, right? And a lot of it's pushed by countries that are just kind of tired of the US having a leg up, right? And then you start getting into, well, okay, so what are they going to start using? The Chinese yuan, which is like 90% of that currency is in China, right? So that's not really something that's going to be used on a global scale. And so then you have the British pound. Okay, I mean, the dollar is still going to remain supreme, but you are having all of these countries that want a neutral asset, right? And when you look at the digital asset market, you look at technology, you look at liquidity, you look at the people behind these technologies, right? They've kind of decided on what they're going to want to use here in the future, right? So it's not like they're going to wake up tomorrow and hey, we're gonna go with XYZ coin because it's cool, it's hip, it's what's trending. They're gonna go with something that they feel confident with, because when they move this to this new system, it's not like they can go back, right? They're gonna have both systems kind of running parallel at the same time, just in case something happens. But realistically, these decisions have already been made at a very high level, and we're just not very privy to them.
Yeah, I would agree, and I would state that you're spot on with things running in parallel right now. Just my thoughts, but I'm with you. I think people get a little antsy, when you're making an investment. 4-year time horizon, I think is a minimum, and if you're anticipating things moving faster than that, you're probably investing for the wrong reasons. And you may even want to consider yourself a trader rather than an investor.
Yeah.
Just, there's lots of things that you can do to create income and build business and do other things aside from digital assets. And I think, if you were going to park money somewhere, a lot of people like gold and silver as a hedge, especially in the current environment. Other people like different currencies. People are betting that there'll be a revaluation of some kind. I think they'll just issue new currencies and there'll be an exchange rate between the old currency and the new one. I hope I'm wrong. I hope people make $1 bazillion on the dinar and the dong and the zong or the zim.
People go with what they're comfortable with, right? People invest with what their comfort level is, right? And gold, silver, and some of these currencies, that's all they've known for a very long time. And it's very hard to get those type of people to invest in something, especially a digital asset, right? Where, you have your FTXs and your Lunas and all of these things, right? It pushes a bad narrative around the whole space when it's just a couple bad actors that are trying to commit fraud and things like that. So, adoption, it'll take some time, but when it gets here, it'll be here, right? And I think, the ETF approval with Bitcoin, that's going to be the start of ETF everything, right? You hear Larry Fink talking about the future of the stock and bond market. It's going to be on one distributed ledger. You really need to take what that guy says seriously, because that's where this is heading. And derivatives market, I mean, what is that, a quadrillion-dollar market?
Derivatives is on the low end, people speculate, somewhere around 800 trillion. On the high end, I mean, people think maybe 2 quadrillion is some people's estimate. I actually think it's probably more than that, which sounds crazy, but they rehypothecate the same treasury over and over again, and use it as collateral, and they'll loan it to somebody else, and they use it as the same collateral, and so it's just bets on bets. My analogy for the derivatives market, and I don't know if I did this on a lot. Maybe I did it with Vandell, but I'll tell you. So you're at we got the Super Bowl here in another month or so. Okay, you're in Vegas. You're at the Super Bowl. you got two guys in front of you, and they have a bet on this play, not even the game, just this play. Okay, so we've already got one layer of betting here, and you're going to bet the guy next to you that the guy on the left punches the guy on the right after he loses this bet. So now we've got like, 3 or 4 layers of stuff here that have to happen. And you're going to take the $100 bill that you borrowed from your buddy. So you don't even have the 100. You're going to take one that you borrowed from your buddy, and that's what you're going to use it on this. And you're going to leverage it 100x.
Yep.
That's what the banks do with
every day.
These derivatives.
Did you see JP Morgan and these guys they're wanting to sue the Fed because of bank reserves? The Fed wants banks to have 20% or 30% cash reserves on hand because of all of this madness, and now they're it was like 2 or 3 days ago, but they're thinking about suing the Fed because they don't want they don't want to be able to have to hold all this cash on hand just in case, right? So banks are always going to find shady things to get around stuff, and there's really not much that we can do about it, but we can go along for the ride.
Well, we're here for it.
Yeah.
You want to get into some AMA and questions here in the chat?
Yeah, let's do it, man. A lot to talk about.
Matty G has asked, how do retail investors use the AMM and what are the risks? A great question. And the real answer is we don't know.
Yeah. I was gonna say
until they're live and we have the digital identity and you have KYC and AML compliance built into the network, and we'll see. We have accounts with PolySign. We have an account with PolySign. We have our clients underneath there, and so we've been through that process with them. They're already all KYC. Their wallets are held. They know what the assets are there. If I'm right about the delegation component and we're able to escrow those assets and delegate that, then their assets sit in qualified custody. They'll remain insured, and they'll be able to participate and earn yield through that mechanism in the AMM and be able to earn LP tokens that they can take distributions from the pool on after they appreciate. But so what are the risks? If it's done that way, kind of riskless, really. And that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that people don't have to give up their asset and put it directly into the pool. If you do, David Schwartz, again, smart guy, he's got a rebalancing mechanism that really inhibits the impermanent loss component within the pools. However, again, if the asset appreciates and the other asset on the other side of the pool doesn't appreciate in comparison, you're going to miss out on those gains because half of what you've put up is in the other asset at the time. So when you go to pull it from the pool and the LP tokens and exchange it for XRP on the backside, you won't have the same value. So that's kind of the risk that I see if that's the way it works. What about you, Crypto Sensei?
Yeah, it's going to be some trial and error, right? We don't know what we don't know, right? And so, I mean, I'd imagine a lot of these AMMs are going to have stables on the other end of it, so you kind of limit the risk, right? And so it's not just two currencies that are going to be floating around in price. But honestly, you don't know what you don't know until it actually happens. So I think it's going to be some trial and error. It's going to figure out where we stand once these kind of get implemented and how we can best use them. There's going to be a lot of techniques. There's going to be a lot of strategies. And I mean, you kind of hit it right on the head, right? A lot of people don't realize that, KYC AML is like the bread and butter of what you're going to need to make all of this work, right? It's a big part of the reason why banks are not going to use Bitcoin to send money to and from, right? Because you need to know who's on the other end of that transaction, and if that's a sanctioned bank, I mean, you're talking about millions of dollars in fines. So having that all built in as part of it is one of those necessary layers that you're going to need. And when we get there, we'll kind of know what we're dealing with, and we'll probably come back and have another conversation a month or two from now, and we'll have some really unique strategies on what we're doing to make money with AMMs, and we'll share that with everybody.
Yeah, well, and if you want to go play with it, Orchestra.finance is a side chain where the AMMs are live in beta. So if you want to go play around with it and see what you can do, I will say we do have some people from the mastermind that have decided to do that, and they actually did pretty well. One of the gentlemen put it into a liquidity pool between Bitcoin and XRP, and we know He did that like 2 or 3 months ago, back in November, and obviously the run up happened in Bitcoin during that time frame. So he actually got some appreciation that he otherwise wouldn't have. So it's a good hedge too, right?
Yeah.
So let's say, I think eventually XRP becomes a pretty stable price. You're not going to have the volatility. It may stay stable for extended periods of times, just like it does now.
Yeah,
And then, yeah,
we have a stable currency. It's just at 50 cents.
So, I'm hoping for a high price stable coin later on, like David Schwartz has mentioned. But we'd have a person here in the chat that asked early on, Ash Hoey, I guess he's in Australia. Shout out to you guys there in Australia for tuning in. Down under. I've got a business partner out there. He's great. We're going to be doing some cool things in Australia. So he says some kind words, and then he asks people in saying, what do we think the token can achieve as far as a high price? Is it still valuable to move currency at any price of XRP? Doesn't the speed mean low volatility and price change when swapping between currencies? Yeah, so that's the whole point. The latency on the network's 3 to 4 seconds right now. With the upgrade that they're making and the improvements to the network, we should be able to scale to like 3,000 TPS, right? So like 3,000 transactions per second. Once they add the side chains and you have the interoperability, that scales exponentially. And then Cobalt is a layer 2 on the XRPL that has been discussed very little. But David Schwartz, when he has mentioned it, stated that it could improve, settlement time down to like 2 seconds. So if that's the case, even if you did have small volatility in the network, I mean, we saw a 5% drop today on the hack news, right? Or
well,
maybe it was associated. Who knows? It's probably just a narrative, but you have to have that aspect. It has to settle quickly, and it actually ends up being less problematic than the current system, right? So right now you have exchange rates between, let's say, the dollar and the peso. People come here to work, they send money back home through MoneyGram or some of the other means, and it takes these intermediary banks 3 to 5 days to get somewhere in Mexico, and the exchange rate could have moved multiple basis points or a couple percent. And so by the time they take the fees and it lands there, you could have 80%, 85% of the money that you sent is what your family gets. So very inefficient. And at scale, that's what XRP fixes. You want to speculate on some values you think you could go to?
I mean, I think people need to understand that, XRP getting to a high value is not something that retail is going to come in and do, right? It's not something that we can invest in and push this price to $100 or $1,000. It's going to be value and debt and things that are added to the XRP ledger. That is where real value is going to come from, right? And so I think there's just a lot of kind of misconception of retail having the power to even lift the price to like $20 or $30. I mean, we would be at this what, $400-500 billion in market cap just to do that, and that's a lot of money, right? You basically got to take everything out of Bitcoin and put it into XRP, and you just don't have that new money right now, right? In the asset. So I do think over time, I mean, you do see people talking about the central banks have already discussed a price for XRP that they're going to use and settle. I mean, there's really no way for us to verify. It would make sense that if they're going to be using this asset, right? If you look at James Wallace coming out and saying, "Oh, Ripple's working, 5 an ounce, 5 not an ounce, and then 20 that they're working on the side," right? When you're talking to 30 central banks and you have 130 central banks working on CBDCs, you're talking about like 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 central banks are testing the technology, right? And so you have to imagine there have been discussions about this And what those discussions are, I mean, I'd love to be a fly on the wall, but you have to imagine that they've had to discuss this and talk about it. And, we're just hoping that those discussions went really well, and they'll decide, and hey, maybe this is a price that we decide that it settles at, and whatever else needs to be figured out to do that happens. But right now, just speculate on price. I mean, you just basically close your eyes and throw a dart at the board with random numbers on it. We're never going to be exactly right or even close to it, but it could be something silly if everything goes well.
Yeah, I would agree. When you say silly, my silly is like 4 or 5 digits. That's a silly number.
I'm good
Maybe
with that.
maybe 6 or 7 digits if you hang out long enough, or if people are still able to own it at that point.
Could you imagine? Oh God, you wouldn't even know what to do with all of that money. I mean, even at $1,000, I mean, you would never have to worry about anything ever again.
I feel like, and my clients feel this way too. And people, as they come into the money and reflect on things, I think they will as well. With that comes a lot of responsibility and power.
Yeah.
And when you have way more than enough to take care of yourself, you almost have a social responsibility to help others. Either create jobs or put that money to work somewhere that it benefits the community, or start a nonprofit or foundation that allows you to give it away. Like, if you can make it faster than you can give it away, what a wonderful problem to have, right? Talk about your cup overflowing. But that's where some people that I'm privileged to know are, and that's how they feel. It's not. They have a social responsibility to use that capital in a way that benefits society.
Yeah.
And that's also the norm that I've found. I mean, I've met with so many people that do have a good size allocation to digital assets. A lot of people in the XRP community in particular that I think will end up doing very well. And the commonality I've found amongst all those people is that they don't care about the Lambos. They don't care about being flashy. They're kind of old money, blue collar people that just have good hearts. And when this happens, you're going to buy a yacht or do anything. I mean, maybe they will. Maybe they'll buy a yacht or something nice, but they're going to use that yacht to sail around the world and help kids in Africa, or build cities. Or I have one buddy that he wants to, create some buses that have showers on them for the homeless people in different cities, right? Just so he can drive it around, and he'll pay for it. He doesn't care. He just wants to be able to give people a place to be able to take a bath once a week that don't have the opportunity. And those are the kind of things, like when you have enough money that you can kind of burn it and know that you're not going to get it. You're not even investing in things to get it back. You're just investing into the social good to help people.
Yeah.
That's a really cool spot to be. And I'm hopeful that, a lot of people watching this, or that might watch it later, or have significant allocations to some digital assets, again, most people already feel that way, but if you don't, think about that and figure out, if you had way more than you'd ever need, what would you do with the extra?
Yeah. And that's a great point, man. And I think that, a lot of people need to understand is, like, you can only buy so much stuff, right? How many houses or cars or watches do you really need? And if you really look at the greater good, there's so many people that don't even have, $5 in their pocket, right? And so, I've been thinking about this, and what I'd really like to do is invest in, education for people, right? And helping them kind of get out from where they are, and helping them with school, helping them with shelter, things like that. I think there's a lot of good that can be done. And when we get to that place where we have an abundance of everything, then, give it away, or give a lot of it away. Because, when you're gone, all you're going to be remembered for is either the person that spent money and only cared about themselves, or the person that really helped people. Like, how many people do you want at your funeral, right? Or how many people do you want remembering you when you're gone? And that speaks volumes about who you are in life and what you decide to do with that capital. So, I do think there's a lot of people in the XRP community that, if this did happen, I think there's a lot of good that would come from it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, I'm too. It'll be a fun journey. It's already been a long odyssey, but I think it'll come to a close, and there'll be a rainbow at the end eventually.
I'm looking forward to that. Man. We'll have a grand party in Hawaii. Everyone will pull up their yachts, and we'll do that thing.
Have a good time. There's a couple other good questions here. So, one in particular, we got LC. He says, Jake, Basel III, do you think the TRWA goes hand in hand, I guess, with Basel III is what he's asking. If so, does that have an end game of July 1st, 2028, if the backside of all tokenization? Yeah. I mean, you need collateral to back things, and they're going to have to hold collateral on hand. And in 2020, the banks didn't have to hold any collateral on hand. They just print, do, loan, whatever they wanted, which was unprecedented. We saw asset prices go crazy. We saw all the risk on investments go wild. Everybody had free money.
Good times.
Yeah. Well, if you had access to capital then, and really over the last 20 years, even since 08, if you've been able to extend lines of credit and continue to purchase assets that appreciated over that time because of the inflation, like you've done really well. If you listen to Dave Ramsey, you're probably still broke because he's the antithesis of that. And that's, I don't like that. I don't like that debt is an advantage. But that's just, it's a game, right? And if you understand the rules to the game and you can play it, then you can win. And most people, to your point, the education. I think if they taught you about this stuff in school, or you had, with social media and YouTube and all these other avenues, I think people have really been able to educate themselves and kind of figure some of this stuff out.
Yeah.
But until then, unless you had a mentor or your parents were wealthy or you just happened to, get the right job, you didn't have a way of acquiring this knowledge or taking advantage of stuff. And so I'm excited for the future. What do you want to do on the educational side? What are you looking at?
I mean, grants for people, being able to take somebody that can't afford a higher education and giving them the means to not only go to school, but, a place to live, food on the table and access to a job afterwards. Right. I think that's, the biggest problem for people is not just paying for school, but, making it through that. Right. Because if you're struggling day to day to live, you're not thinking about, straight A's. You're not thinking about, all of that stuff. So you're thinking, how am I going to get my next meal? Right. How am I going to work, 10 hours a day and then go to school at night? Or it's just, there's a lot of things that can be done around that education piece to really kind of uplift people. Right. And so, it's fun to think about. I know I'm talking with a few people on maybe starting a fund down the line, and that would be an aspect around that, a part of that business. We'll see what I can put together as an individual. It's a lot easier when you have, people and help, and obviously the capital that you need to do all this stuff. Right. It's good to talk about now, and you're like the planner. You have a plan for everything, which is really cool. But I do think there's a lot of things around just giving somebody a free education, but also taking care of everything that they need around them too, so they can, do that stress free, and just kind of move on to a better life, and then they can uplift their families and people around them. And there's a lot of money in the world, and there's a lot of really greed. It's a lot about greed, right? And you really don't have a lot of, Sam Bankman was talking about, he's going to give it all away. He didn't give away anything, right? And so it's one thing to talk about it, but to start working on and having a plan is really important, impactful.
Yeah. You follow Alex Hormozy?
I on Twitter a bit, not okay. Like.
So I'm a fanboy. I like Alex. I started following him when he had like 2,000 followers before he ever blew up into what he is now. And he was making content then that I thought was, worthy of hundreds of thousands. And now he's got millions of followers.
Yeah.
But one of the things that he said is he thinks that, well, and Cody Sanchez too, who's another billionaire or multi-centimillionaire. I don't think she's quite billionaire status yet. She buys boring businesses. Very smart young woman. Getting paid to learn. So Google Amazon, a lot of these large corporations, they pay for your education while you're there. UPS is famous for paying for your college degree while you're working at UPS, right? So I think we'll see more of that. I think employers will start creating opportunities and educational programs around what they need from their employees and how they can help them scale and grow within an entity. So you're already working there. You have a job. Maybe you do have to sign a contract where, like, for the first 5 years, you do have to work there. And then even maybe a couple years after that, after you get whatever certification or qualifications they pay for, just so that they can make sure that they get their fair shake for providing that for you. But if you had to give up 5 or 7 years, which you're going to do in college anyway, if you're working a job and hustling and you got to pay for things. I mean, it took me, 6 years to get a 4-year degree. Like, if you're working full time and doing that, it's hard to take enough class load and actually do well, like to what you were pointing out. So anyway, I'm a proponent of that. I think if we can create incentives for people that are aligned, I'm about win-win. And to your point, I think the world's been kind of a zero-sum game for a long time. You've had winners and losers. And I don't think it has to be that way. I think that the world is abundant. I think there's way more than enough money for everybody. And it ends up flowing up to the upper echelon. I'm hopeful that things change on that. But the way that we do that is we start creating aligned incentives within communities and networks of people where I don't want to say you put other people's interests ahead of yours, but you make it where they have to win for you to win. And if you structure deals that way, then everybody ends up walking away from the table feeling like they won, right? And maybe they even feel like I like when other people do a deal with me and they feel like they got it over on me.
Yeah.
But we both won, you know what I mean? Yeah. So,
it's business mindset, right? It's business mindset.
Yeah. Well, but not everybody's that way. To your point, there's a lot of greedy people out there that and they may even say that they feel the other way.
Of course,
I've experienced that.
Yeah.
Actions speak louder than words, right? So, anyway, yeah. What else we have here in the chat?
Decoupling effect.
Yeah. I think that there probably will be a decoupling of the traditional market and 100%. Digital assets in particular, especially as, they're going to need something to save this system. We're reaching out to the NASDAQ. I don't know if you watch Blockchain Backer. I love him. I think his stuff's great. I think we're going to have something significant occur sometime this year before the election that puts a bad taste in people's mouth on traditional stuff. And they're going to need a solution for that. And when they need the solution to fix the traditional system, that's when I think you see the decoupling. What about you?
Well, you got to look at where we are right now in the U.S. And, we live here, so let's just talk about it really quickly. You have an election year, right? You're going into a Trump-Biden rematch, and whatever your politics are, whatever. But you have one side, Trump, saying, under me, there'll never be a CBDC, right? But you have 130 countries globally working on a CBDC, right? So if he gets elected, does that put the U.S. now 4 more years behind the rest of the world in adoption, right? Or does the Biden administration move forward before the election on a CBDC, right? So that's where I'm focused at right now, because I see one side that just maybe could care less about this, and I see a lot of I don't know, just bullshit about central bank digital currency and how it's going to enslave people. And I just, fear tactics. It's just another topic and another way to do it. It's, you have a digital representation of a sovereign currency, right? The system is breaking, right? It's going to break eventually, right? They're going to need to make this step and move regardless of what our feelings are about it, right? And so I'm more of on the line of, if it's going to come, let's just do it. the crypto market is most likely going to decouple from the stock market, right? We've done this where I think the stock market does good, profits are taken, put in the crypto market, but eventually the crypto market is going to grow by itself, regardless of what happens in the gold or the silver market or whatever else, right? And so as things get digitized, brought on chain, right, that value is now going to live, in this new great place, the digital asset space, right? That's a lot of liquidity that's going to come in, right? It's a lot of money that's going to be coming in, right? And what ecosystems does that uplift, right? And that's really what I'm focused on and investing into is things that I think are going to have the biggest impact from tokenizing real estate, tokenizing stocks, bonds, derivatives, all of this stuff, right? It's coming regardless of our feelings, regardless of CBC. And so, I mean, I do think the Biden administration is probably going to do something before the election, just in case, to try to kind of move this over the line. I know they've been testing this for many years. We don't know exactly where everything stands, but it wouldn't surprise me if they don't try to do something before November or December. But we'll have to see, man. I don't know. What are your feelings kind of about the election and Republicans not wanting CBDCs? I mean, do you think that's going to sprinkle down into, a bigger problem for the U.S. being more behind other countries?
If I could put a word to 2024, I think it's going to be volatile, both directions in a lot of different asset classes.
Yeah.
And it's because it's an election year. You actually have 140 elections this year, more than we've ever had in history, all going on at the same time. You've got an upheaval of the people that are in office, right?
Yeah.
And when you're in office in the election year, you want to kind of play to people and make sure they're feeling warm and fuzzy, so they'll reelect you, especially if you're up for a second term like Biden. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a Fed pivot, maybe a reduction in interest rates this year after the long pause that we've had. I think if it's not in March, the next one, I think they'll pull down maybe 25 basis points or 0.25%. And that'll, people will kind of feel that. But on the other side of that, asset prices will go up.
Yeah.
Risk on will go up. So all these people thinking that they're going to buy homes cheaper. I want to buy a home too, and I'm hoping it goes down. But I'm very confident it's going to go the other way, which I'm sad to say. So, anyway, just as far as the election goes, I don't know who's going to win. It seems like I'm here in Texas, right? So everybody I talk to wants Trump. We're
of course
red state Republican. I've been to a few other places in the country where that's not been the case. So we'll see what ends up shaking out. I am concerned that they do try to run another COVID narrative here at the end of the year. ChatGPT put a bug in my ear the other day when I asked it a question. We'll see.
At the end of the day, it's kind of come down to who's got the best policies, right? Who's got the best vision for the country.
It should.
Well, I mean, I don't know, man. You have one side, you have somebody that has 91 felony counts that some of those cases are going to be figured out before the election, right? Is this person even going to be able to run if they are convicted of whatever they're being accused of convicted of, right? So politics is a very subject, right? I don't love what the Biden administration and Gary Gensler have done to the crypto market. At the same time, I just don't know if I can vote for somebody that has all of this baggage, right? I really liked Chris Christie. I don't know. He kind of called it straight. He's not in the race anymore. You have Nikki Haley now kind of going after Trump. And I don't know what this is going to look like in 6 months, man, because you do have some of these court cases coming up in April, right? And, I just look at the bigger narrative around women's rights, about tax credits for the rich. I just think there's a lot of unfavorable policies coming out of the right at the moment. And I just don't know if they're going to have enough to get them over the line that they're going to need in this next election. I mean,
yeah.
in the last 4 years, has Trump become more popular or less popular among average Americans? I don't have the answer to that question, but we'll have to see how it plays out, man. I really don't want to see Biden for another 4 years, but I really don't care for Trump for 4 years. So it's kind of like you're fucked if you're, excuse my French, but either way.
You want Kennedy? What do you think about Kennedy?
I don't know, man. Like, Kennedy really is not a politician, right? And he's got some interesting, I don't know, man. I think that the things behind Kennedy and some of the things that the money behind him is a little, I think that, I think there may be another candidate that kind of pops up out of nowhere, independent candidate that could become very popular. But at the end of the day, it just doesn't seem like we have a good selection of leaders, right? Either way, Biden or Trump, they're either going to be the oldest president that ever was elected, regardless of who gets elected, right? So, both of them, I just don't find appealing, either one of them. And I just think Americans deserve a better, in my personal opinion, somebody younger, somebody with vision, somebody that's going to actually maybe bring us all together instead of, awkward moments at Christmas. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of people here in the chat say it doesn't really matter, and I kind of agree with that. I think that there's whatever's supposed to happen is probably meant to happen, regardless of what puppet's in office. Yeah, we can bring the conversation back to the crypto side of things.
Yeah.
The one that's pinned here says you may have discussed this earlier, but how early are we on HBAR? Great company. But they're doing too much, feels like too many silos. I did a video on HBAR just the other day, and I'm sure Crypto Sensei has covered HBAR in depth in his previous videos as well. So they're here in Dallas with me, Hedera Hashgraph, and I don't understand the narrative behind people wanting all this stuff to be decentralized. There's a lot of efficiencies that can be created with blockchain and smart contracts just within applications within companies that are siloed ecosystems, right? It's nice to have interoperability and be able to transact on a unified ledger that's transparent and trustless. When you're exchanging value between two parties, I think that that's imperative, and that'll be a paradigm shift for how people transact in that aspect. But there's going to be a lot of private use cases for this stuff. There's a couple different networks, Hedera, Casper, the XRPL, all of those allow for private ledgers and ecosystems that are not public for everybody to just see. And so anyway, yeah, I'm for the silos. I just want those silos to have ways to be interoperable. Just like when the internet was started, if you didn't have the same email as somebody else, so let's say I have Yahoo and you've got AOL, I couldn't email you. I had to be on the same communication.
It's chaos.
Yeah. But then they created the internet protocol and the email protocol, the HTML, and all those other ones that you don't even think about, but you use the technology.
Right?
That allow all those things to be interoperable. So, I don't get too hung up on silos. I think you need to implement the technology in siloed applications first, just like the internet. And then people will want to be interoperable with one another and be able to trust each other and transact through a unified, transparent ledger. And then that's when you kind of pull those walled gardens down and you're able to create those ecosystems. But I think that the silos will still exist in a lot of applications. What about you?
Yeah, I think HBAR is a good asset, and I couldn't have said it better. You cover that really well. I think if people want to figure out what the hot narratives are going to be over the next maybe 6 months, you should be focused on layer 2s on Ethereum or new layer 1s, right? You have Scroll, Starknet, Linea, Mantle, DYDX, Base, Optimism, Arbitrum. You're going to see a lot of growth in these areas, right? In these layer 2s. And I think that that's really what I've been focused on in my community, is educating these people, my community on what's coming around there. I think there's some great, Eclipse, where you're bringing kind of like Ethereum Virtual Machine and Solana together, Manta, Celestia, Cosmos. There's so many incredible ecosystems that are kind of currently being built out that I think that you might find more value in for your money. I feel like I've been holding HBAR for quite a long time. It really hasn't done much, but I mean, I do think there's overall good technology and solutions there. It's just, would I take 10 grand and invest it into HBAR today? I'd probably invest in some of these layer twos and then come back to HBAR, down the line. I just don't know if it's going to explode in the next.
Well, so to that, do you think HBAR is more like an XRP? Do you think it's a mainstay, one of the base networks, layer ones that a lot of applications are built out of on top of? Maybe for like Web3 and dApps, just based on the people that are sitting on the council.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the people that are sitting on the council, you know that they're using the technology to develop all of the stuff that you just mentioned, right? And I don't think we've seen a whole lot about what those technologies are and what that's going to be. But when you have basically the biggest 40, 50 companies in the world all on the council for HBAR, you kind of do need to take notice of that, right? And where's that going to lead us, and what are they going to develop and roll out? Time will tell. But I do think HBAR is one of those kind of legacy assets, I guess you'd call it now, like your XRPs and your XLMs, that if you plan to buy this, is something that you're going to hold for quite a long time.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think if you're speculating on ROI in the short term, there's probably a lot of better plays.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for long-term utility, there's like the ones that we just mentioned here, maybe even Algorand falls into that, and there's probably some others. But I think the narrative for blue chip cryptos will shift to the layer ones and the ones that are used in different use cases and are kind of the base network that provide a lot of utility long term. I think that paradigm starts to shift this year with the tokenization of real world assets and the application of these technologies in certain enterprise situations. I think a lot of the speculation hype is, hopefully it's on the way out the door. Probably not. There probably will always be some speculation hype on things. I was on Around the Blockchain earlier today, and there was a gentleman there that basically makes all of his investment decisions on what he thinks is, speculative and hype's going to go to. And I can't blame him.
Yeah.
Right. Up until this point, that's all that's driven the market. This is all speculation. We don't really have any
still is
world adoption. So
yeah, I mean, that's all the crypto market is still, right? I mean, we are getting real world use cases that are being built out and tested. But I mean, if you look at the what is the biggest network that has the most tokenized assets on it? Isn't it like XLM? And you would never really, I think there's like $300 million in tokenized assets under Franklin Templeton. But you really wouldn't know that unless you're, digging through all this. So I don't even think we've scratched the surface really on actual real adoption. I think we are still in a speculation market, and we're still going to be in a speculation market for quite some time. And once this shift actually happens, where you're bringing all of this real value now onto blockchain, and that's where it's going to live, that's really where you're going to get this big boom bust cycle, where you're going to get a lot of projects that are just kind of going to fade out and not be around anymore. And you're going to have the blue chip assets like your HBARs, your XLMs, your XRPs. That's where a lot of the value is going to end up in the end.
Yeah, I think if you're holding on a 4 to 10 year time frame, probably goodbye. If you're looking for a short term appreciation, like Crypto Sensei said, there's going to be some other stuff. There's a question for you here in the chat. It says, what are your thoughts on Canadian project Steam Exchange partnering with the University of Waterloo? The marketing guy for Steam just announced the partnership with Matic and /Polygon.
Partnerships are great. I see partnership announcements all the time from pretty much anything. What is it going to actually, like, that's what the question I'd be asking, like, what value do you see this partnership bringing, and what is actually the partnership about, right? I don't know the specific partnership that they're referring to. I know if you're talking about I see Steam Exchange. I don't know if I've heard of Steam Exchange, but it sounds great, but at the end of the day, partnerships are just a way for a project to kind of get a little bit of hype to the next partnership, the next cycle. But really, what does that partnership encompass? If you can figure that out and find out what that real value is, and see if that value actually, is legitimized in the real world and actual use case being put into place, I think that's really where you got to kind of figure out, is this just a fluff partnership, or is this something that actually has real value in the future?
Yeah, there's like Quant and Electronium are both on it has to do with London and their CBDC. The name escapes me right now. Ripple's on there too. I mean, there's some big names on there, but really hasn't done neither one of those projects. The runs that have happened on those have been completely speculative.
Yeah.
Again, so yeah, I'm hoping that we get some actual utility, and that's what starts driving price. But until that actually happens, it's going to continue to be, the same narrative. We've got the Bitcoin halving coming up in April, May, and then we should see, maybe we'll have one more dip beyond that, and then we're off to the races if all constraints remain the same.
Yeah.
Right. And this will be cycle number 5.
It's going to be a unique cycle, because before you didn't have this ETF narrative, right? And a lot of people kind of shun the ETF narrative like it's not a huge deal. A lot of people thought once the ETF was going to be approved that Bitcoin was just going to go, to an all-time high. And I was trying to let people know, and I do 2 chats a week in my community, and we had a long talk about this on multiple occasions. I said, Bitcoin is going to go down. People are going to sell. Like, people have been trying to trade this for a very long time, right? You had the GPTC trust that got transitioned over, 19,000 Bitcoin got unlocked. You had people that sold, right? And that's kind of where we are right now. And so will the hype be, because it's happened in 2020, 2016, 2012, that, a little bit before the halving and after, you get this nice pump. People need to realize, like, once you get that Bitcoin pump, you need to be focused on Ethereum and like layer 2s. Like, that's really what's going to go crazy. Your altcoins are going to go crazy. And I just did a video on Render and the partnerships and all of that stuff in that ecosystem. And I was blown away at some of the stuff that they're doing with that. And I really think that, like, that's become one of my favorite, projects. I was talking about it like 2 years ago, but like, I haven't had a hard look at Render in such a long time. And it's incredible. You have Paramount, you have Disney, you have Neo Geographic, you have Deadmau5 doing stuff with the Render network. You have, it's just incredible GPU rendering, AI. Really that is going to be a very hot narrative that a lot of money is going to go into. You also have DePIN, right? Decentralized infrastructure. There's a lot of really cool use cases that are being built out around that. I invested in a project that's got about $400,000 market cap. It's very early still, and I think that project can do really well. It's called Storage Chain. I've been a very big proponent of this project. I've been talking with the CEO. I think that's a really cool narrative. Decentralized storage. That's going to be a $500 billion industry by 2030. There's so much here in crypto, right? And you can't be in 100 different projects because you're never going to be able to keep track of it. So you really need to find out what's close to your heart, what you really believe in, and focus on those few narratives and really find the gems in those narratives. And those will take you, through this next cycle and make you a lot of money if you do it right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, you're to your point there. So does that project use the IPFS?
Yep.
Okay. See, so Interplanetary File Storage System is what that stands for. I was really bullish on Filecoin early on, but there's a lot of gaps in that network. It's great for long-term storage, but it really doesn't have a way to pull that data quickly and for it to be accessible by a lot of people in a decentralized manner. And so I think whoever figures that out, maybe it's the project that you're looking at, it's going to have a lot of upside and use case.
I'll share this with you behind the scenes. The CEO is taking multiple companies, from startups to sold them for eight figures. He's a guy's named Chris Dominguez, very sharp guy, right? I deal with hundreds of projects a year, and I talk with project heads, and very few are actual legitimate businessmen that know what they're doing. And they've taken all of this, newest technology and file sharing. They shard it across 42 nodes across the world. They put it back together. You can mint anything into an NFT. You can share the files really quickly. That's going to be a very hot narrative. There's $14 billion in deep pin projects, right? It only takes 5, 10, $20 million market cap, and I can make several $1 million in that project. So there's certain narratives that if you're following GambleFi, GameFi, AI, there's going to be a lot of winners over the next 6 to 12, 24 months. And then as we get to 27, 28, you're going to get a big bust cycle, and you just want to do as well as you can until that happens. And then, make sure that you're in your traditional assets like your XRPs, your XLMs, your XCCs, because those are really what's going to be here after it's all said and done.
So you think...
Hit me.
Yeah. So you think we're going to remain with the constraints that exist for one more cycle, and then after that, we'll have enough build out of actual use case that the narrative can change, but you still think there's going to be a bust after that? So is that when the 99% that Brad Garlinghouse talks about goes to zero, and then you have the say 70 to 90 projects that are the mainstays, and those go into just this crazy bull market for a decade?
I think that's how you have to look at it, right? I mean, what do you have, like 30,000 crypto projects where, really 95% of them don't do anything, and they're all based on, influencers, hype, speculation, and there's really nothing there when you kind of peel back the layers, right? So, maybe it's a little bit more than 100, but I just don't see, this market staying the same where you have just garbage that is created out of thin air and then you're expecting people to buy it. I think regulation will set in place certain requirements that you need to fulfill when you're launching a crypto project, and all of the garbage that's out there will eventually end up being what it is, right? Garbage, and you just don't want to get stuck in that. And so I do think there's going to be a bust cycle, just like there was with the .com boom. And there's going to be certain companies that come out of that are going to rule the world of digital assets, and that's your Ripples and your Stellars and your HBARs and things like that. Stronghold, I think someone put a comment about Stronghold SHX. I think that we were talking about that when it was like $1 million market cap, $2 million market cap. What was this, like 12 months ago when it launched or something? I know they're building around some different use cases there. We'll see how well that does, but I mean, I think it's still at like $20 million market cap when you're looking at other projects kind of close to it that are in the billions, right? So there's still so many opportunities, but you are going to go through a bust cycle.
Just say hey to Anthony. Appreciate you tuning in, brother. It's good to see you, and got to meet you last year at multiple events. So is that kind of what you run down in your community, man? Just shout it out. Tell people what you run over there and how you kind of put that together.
So Cryptonaires has been around for 3 years. We're going to have our 3rd year celebration here in April. And originally the community got put together because I enjoyed teaching people about crypto. It started like in a Telegram type channel. And it was like, man, this is a terrible way to inform people, because you have people logging in 12 hours later and they're not going to go through 150 messages. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to keep doing what I was doing, which was researching crypto projects, connecting with teams, seeing the future, seeing the vision, seeing the technology, and working with those projects. And what we've been doing in the bear market is building a team that, all from around the world, very solid people. I've been able to bring communities. There's an Elevate community, which is kind of a really good trading bot. There's a lot of different companies that are out here, very few that actually have good numbers. We partnered with them. They're in our community. We have Live TA. We have people that do write-ups on what are the hottest narratives coming. We stay ahead of kind of the mainstream crypto banters and things like that. They do great work. They have tens of thousands of dollars to pay all these people to put information, but we're ahead of the game on a lot of this stuff. And so, Cryptonaires is a place where, people from all walks of life, depending on what your knowledge is. I have people that join that don't know anything about crypto, and through my chats and through AMAs and through learning on how to research and do these things, we help get you to a place where you feel confident in your own research. People share ideas. People, share technology. A really good example of sharing ideas is our team found a project called Zygames. Zygames is a layer 3 on Arbitrum, and it had one of the biggest test nets in history. And they had a node sale. Node started at $300. And I knew from the research that this was going to be one of the biggest projects that was launching in 2023 that you needed to buy into. Like I did an event for the node. I told people weeks in advance, like, this is the one you should focus on. And so a month and a half later, nodes are $3,000 each now. But I think my original investment was like 12 or 13 grand. I bought 30 nodes. The airdrop alone from that, I got for the first airdrop, I got 45 grand back on the airdrop. And these nodes now make, $700-800 a month per node. So, I've took
$300 investment.
12 grand turns into 300 or 400 grand a year in passive income because of, identifying opportunities. And those are the types of opportunities that, when you have hundreds of people all looking at crypto information, and then they can bring that information into one place, that's very powerful. And that's what we have in our community. We have 25 team members, and we have hundreds of members that are all just looking for the next biggest thing in crypto. And that's where the information is shared.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Well, that's the power of a mastermind, right? If you get in a group in a community where you have aligned interest and you can all bring your own perspectives and do the research, that's when the magic happens. That's cool, man. I'm excited for so if you guys haven't checked out his community, do you have like a link
I'll post a link in here for you guys if you want to check it out. Right now we have a 7-day free trial because I know people get a little finicky when they join crypto communities, and so they want to make sure that what they're joining is legitimate. And so we just signed up on WAP for the 7-day free trial. In the last 2 months, we've had 25 reviews, all 5-star, people really kind of commenting on how valuable the community is. And, at the end of the day, we're not going to be for everybody, but we're going to be there for people that want to learn, that want to grow, and that want to, change their life. And that's really what it's about. I think hopefully I can post that in the general chat. I don't know. If not, I can send it to you.
You should be able to.
But yeah, I'll post it to you. There's the link for 7-day free trial. If you want to take a look at us, at the end of the day, all I care about is the people around me having better lives, and hard work. It's not something that you get into and you're like, oh, I can do this, I can do that. It takes time, energy. You have to be consistent. And you have to show up, right? You have to tell people what's going on. And we do a very good job about keeping track of the market, the hot narratives, the hot themes, and we help people have a better life. And that's really all I care about at the end of the day.
There we go.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you for sharing that with everybody.
Definitely, brother. What was the name of that coin you had mentioned that is the file storage?
Storage chain.
Storage chain.
I'll send you
weird. Is it?
No, STORG here, storagechain.io. I'll send this to you in private chat here, and if you can share it. But the CEO of this project, let me send you his LinkedIn. He's legit, man. I even went back 25 years in this guy's work history just to make sure that I was dealing with a legitimate figure. And this guy, he's actually spent time with random people in my community to help them set up nodes, hours of his day. Right, where he's a CEO, he could be doing all these other things, but he's helping regular people become a part of the infrastructure for the project, right? And so our community found this project at a $100,000 market cap. It went up to like 800 grand. It's come back down a little bit, but they're about to announce their partnerships. Their enterprise solution software is about to get released. There's a lot of really good things. They just got listed on MEXC. They're working on a top 5 exchange listing now. There's value here. There's value here. And nodes right now, it's a little still high of what this is probably going to work out to. You're getting, you basically post your collateral on the node. Right now, you're getting back 20% a month, which is insane. I think that's going to come down to probably like 10% for the longevity of the project. But that project's still like 300 grand market cap. And I think there's a huge, huge future for that project and that team.
That's awesome, man. I like that stuff. Like when you can find something early and it's going to be meaningful and you can get in with the right people, it makes a big difference. So run it across the top there for people that want to go check that out at storagechain.io. Makes a lot of sense to me. So
yeah,
appreciate Larry, for following up on that question.
Yeah, thank
Let's
you.
see here. We got some more people in the chat. Shout out to everybody out there on X and YouTube for holding it down with us on a Wednesday night.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Arweave was another one that was mentioned.
Yeah.
Arweave's, if you want like memoirs for your great grandkids, Arweave is the bomb. Okay, like you can store stuff on that. It never gets erased. It's just held in perpetuity. Filecoin recycles like every 7 years, unless it's mandated that they hold it longer than that. And like I said, I think there's going to be multiple winners in this space. I mean, the market is huge, right? But again, whoever figures out the hot storage and allows people to access data very quickly in a very cryptographic, secure way. So, is storage chain HIPAA compliant? Can they comply with medical standards?
They're working with a medical company, absolutely, and that's really cool. They're working with a CCTV company. I mean, I probably can't say all, I can't spill all the beans, but the CEO has, he's worked with like ESPN, Time Warner. He's down there in LA. He has really amazing connections, and it really only takes one big announcement to really kind of send this thing into overdrive. I mean, if you look at Filecoin, what ICP has 5 billion in market cap, Filecoin has 2.5, BTT has 770 million. I mean, even if this project achieved a $5 or $10 million market cap over the next 6 months, I mean, that you're talking about a 20 to 50x. And if you're running nodes, I do really think this is going to make me a 7-figure payday. But it really is about the team and the technology, and that's what I invest in. I invest in who's running the project and what, the overall consensus of the technology. And if you just saw, there was a huge hack, 26 billion records hacked, Dropbox and all of these things that were hacked, all of your files hacked, gone. And it's just, this is the way of the future. And I do think that this is one of those projects that is just kind of fits all of the boxes for me and what I look for when I'm investing in these very lower cap projects.
Where did they launch in the US, or are they outside the US with their ICO and what they do?
That's a good question. The company, I do believe, is inside of the US, right? They want to be listed on Coinbase. They want to do this. I'd have to double check and see where but they're all located inside of the US in Orange County and in San Diego there. But I think everything is on the up and up. They want to be able to work with medical companies in the US and do all these things. And to do that, you need to be inside of the US. So they made their own blockchain, which is EVM compatible. So you have the Wrap Store token, and then you have the Store token. But man, like I if you start really researching that, watch the the AMAs that I've done with them. James Pelton did one as well. I mean, you're going to see the CEO, and he's one of the sharpest people that I've seen run a crypto project in recent times. Dealing with a lot of these new crypto projects.
I mean, that's what you got to find. You invest in people, right?
Yes.
You can have the best idea, and maybe even the best product, but if you don't have the best team, if you don't have the expertise and the right people in the right place at the right time, sometimes you're way too early. I've seen people, have a fantastic idea and even be able to execute and have the expertise to do it, but people don't even know that they have the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. You don't have product market fit because you're solving for a solution that people don't even know they need. And then you got to create the problem. What the governments do.
You look at decentralized storage and you really, like this is where this is heading, right? People want to be able to control and own their own data. They don't want to have to worry about, Dropbox being hacked and all of their files. I mean, even when you upload to somebody to Dropbox, they own it, right? Or whatever. And so, owning your own photos and videos and all of that stuff and having that secure is a very big deal. And so this company is right about, like I said, to launch their enterprise solution. They're about to launch partnerships. They're about to launch a marketing campaign, and they're working on tier top 5 exchanges right now. So you mix all of that together, and regardless of what happens, like I've already ROI'd from my initial investment. I invested about $75,000 in this company. I've set up nodes. I'm one of the biggest node holders in the world for this project, and I've already ROI'd three months later, and whatever happens now is just kind of
on the house. Yeah,
on the house, man. And that's what you try to do in crypto.
Well, so obviously some biases here. Nothing here is financial advice. Always for educational entertainment purposes only. Always consult with your financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Just trying to bring some education to people.
Yeah.
Shout out, see Zach Rector out there in the audience. Appreciate you for hopping on here, brother. I know he's got. I don't know if maybe he's wrapped up his live that he had earlier today, or maybe he's going live later. I don't know.
He puts out a lot of good content.
Yeah.
I really like what he does on Twitter or X, and it's a big shout out to Zach. He does a lot of good work, man. Thank you for everything you do for the space.
We got another good comment here. So we got Atlantic Living says RBC and HSBC are looking to merge. Do you believe big bank mergers like this are tied into easier development for blockchain tech and CBDCs? Well, this one in particular, I would say yes. HSBC is just partnered with Medico for custody that they're supposed to be launching here in Q1. I mean, we're a month in, haven't seen it yet. So look out for that, by the end of March, hopefully. I think that's coming down the pike. I think a lot of these institutions are starting to see the money that the exchanges are making.
Yes.
And they're going to be moving into the space, right? And that's when you're going to have regulation come in. You're going to have that for them to be able to participate. So maybe we get some of that here in Q1 too. We've got French Hill talking about stablecoin regulation, potentially passing the House and the Senate here in Q1, which would be nice. If you don't have your stablecoin launched, I think you might want to get on the ball, because that does build a moat for the next 2 years if it's passed as is, where nobody that hasn't issued a stablecoin can issue a stablecoin into the market. We saw a lot of large players issue their stablecoins late last year, like PayPal, trying to get ahead of that, I think, once that regulation was proposed. So, what are your thoughts? What do you think the implications for the market would be if we had some type of meaningful regulation from Congress?
I mean, that's what you're missing right now, right? I mean, the U.S. is the biggest financial market in the world, and in order for us to really take this to the next level, you need regulation, right? Stablecoin regulation. We know it's coming, right? Wholesale CBDC is coming, retail CBDC is coming, tokenized bank deposits are coming, and that's where I mean, what is it like? CBDC money is like what, 10 or 15% of global currency, but the rest is mainly bank tokenized bank deposit, or that's what it's going to be, right? So when you're talking about 180 or 190 trillion dollars, that's where we become rich, when you tokenize that value and bring it onto DLT, and stock market, bond market, derivative market, it's all coming. So make your bets now. Hold on, get ready, stay educated, and it's all going to come to us. But we have to have patience. We have to have the know-how. We have to foresee the future of what's coming here. And once it don't happens, right, it'll happen like that, right? What is it in Congress? Nothing happens until they actually need it or want it to happen, and then it happens like this. And that's what's going to happen in this situation.
Yeah, there's it's like trickle flood. Once it needs to happen, they'll move it very quickly. We saw in 2020 how fast things can get passed if there's a need. If there's not a need, then Grandma and Grandpa Joe sitting in the seats there take their sweet time, their vacation and their salary, and put it in the stock market, make a couple million.
If there's not a
like
need,
create
a need, right? That's what they do, right? Is that they'll create a narrative, they'll create some kind of problem, and that they'll have the solution. And once they have the solution, that's going to be good for all of us, right? Because
if you're in position, and here's the other piece of this, and I think this is a topic that's probably relevant for a lot of the audience. If you are invested in digital assets, any digital assets, doesn't matter if it's anything we've even discussed tonight, it could be something completely separate, and you get excited about it. You're going to go tell somebody in your family, you're going to tell somebody in your circle, you're going to tell a friend. A lot of the time they're going to poo-poo on you because they don't understand it. It's new. It's not tangible. A lot of people want to be able to touch and feel something. They want to see it. And until it's actually real for them, then they have a hard time with that. So you're going to have to be able to be steadfast in your own biases. remain confident that those things are going to happen for you, and not get fudded out by the majority of the people that are around you that just don't have the same vision as you. And that's what it is. You have a vision, and it's not meant for everybody. That's why there's a 1%. And the people that can see the future and take action and put themselves, when they move where the puck is going to be, and they catch it, that's how you keep the goal from happening or win the game. It's relevant in life too. So,
well said, man.
What else we have here in the chat? A lot of people talking about Filecoin. There's one gentleman mentioned Brad Garlinghouse and Michael Arrington invested in Filecoin. Interesting, Michael Arrington's been in early on some big stuff. Him and Greg Kidd are two people that I watch. If they get behind something, my ears perk up. Who do you watch, Crypto Sensei? Is there somebody out there that you're like, well, if they talk about that or they mention it, I kind of perk up and start digging?
Who do I respect in the space? Like what channels do I like to watch? I like Crypto Eerie. I think, out of people that make XRP content, she is probably one of the most well-versed, well-rounded, smartest person that I think is in the space. She does a lot of great interviews. She covers everything on a very technical level. I enjoy watching her channel. I watch a little bit of your content, of course. Mostly, I'm on Twitter. I'm on X, hours of the day. I float around on some other channels, too, but I'm just trying to think of like who I like.
Is there any like large investor, like a Kathy Wood, it doesn't have to be Kathy Wood.
Okay.
But like somebody that is in a prominent position that's well respected, that when you talked about Larry Fink earlier, right?
Yeah.
Like when he says stuff, you listen. Is there anybody else like that mentions low cap coins or projects or anything that you feel people should be looking at?
I mean, it really is kind of like a mixed bag of random things I watch on YouTube, to be honest with you. I think, I even though Jamie Dimon hates, the crypto market on one side, I kind of listen to what he says. Of course, Kathy Wood really loves Bitcoin and she talks about that a lot. But there's the Masari guy. I think he's kind of rash but relevant. There's a lot of kind of just random people I'm following on Twitter that kind of put out really good perspective on Bitcoin and the market. I don't know, man. It's just kind of like a mixed bag of just randomness that I kind of put together for my chats.
Maybe you're in your own lane too, and which I can really appreciate. So, like as an example, I told you guys earlier I love Blockchain Backer. When we went, so I met him at Consensus first. He didn't know who anybody was. You could have been somebody that had millions of subs on YouTube. Blinders. Dude, he's into his own TA and doesn't watch other channels because he doesn't want to pick up other people's biases and have that impact his own thesis.
Yeah.
Right? And so I really appreciate it when people are crystal clear on their vision and their work and really don't even have time to like look around. They're so deep on the research and the things that they're doing that they put out their content and they have their mission and kind of just, again, blinders, right?
Who's really good? Like Kevin Cage, I think is pretty cool. When I was growing up, when I was coming up in crypto, I really watched his channel. Brad Kimes, Digital Perspectives, I think has a good show. Those are the people I kind of started learning from. But yeah, like, I think you have a really good point on bias. When you kind of watch too much of one thing, that's now your narrative in your head, right? And you really need to take information from all of these different sources and kind of make your own narrative. And don't be afraid to be wrong, because you're going to be wrong a lot in crypto. If you're investing in the crypto space, you're going to lose a lot, especially if you're investing in newer projects, right? And so the key is at the end of the day is, obviously to make more money when you can. My wife just got home, so my dog's going crazy. But you're right, man. You got to have your own. You got to have your own narratives. You got to have your own thing. Black Swan Capitalist. I like his channel. I don't agree with him on some of the stuff, but I like watching his stuff because it's a different narrative than what I'm used to hearing. I respect that. I was actually talking with him in the background about coming on and doing a talk with him. I don't agree with him about everything, but I like that he's well educated, that he spends time, and he knows what he's talking about, right? And so, there's so many really incredibly smart people here in the space, and you really do need to take a little bit from all of them and form your own opinions, because half of them are going to be right and half of them are going to be wrong. And if you can really spend the time and do the work, you're going to do really well.
Yeah, I would agree. So Matty G's brought up this point here. This is big news today. I'll probably do a video on it tomorrow. I was asked about this on Around the Blockchain. My word to describe this is skeptical.
Yeah. I mean, how do you get your was he storing his seed phrases in his desk or something?
Like how could that possibly? And he's why didn't he have it at PolySign? Like what? How could
it was a little. Yeah, I really don't. I did a short on this earlier because everyone's like, "Oh, the XRP ledger is hacked," and it's like, "Oh man, here we go."
People don't understand.
I don't know, man. I guess I need to be hanging around Chris Larson's desk a little bit more often if I wanted to pick up some XRP. Because
what did he end up with? It was like
$112 million.
So 230 million XRP just off to these 10 different wallets at different exchanges that they're trying to lock down now.
Yeah, I mean, he just gave away a future $1 trillion, so hopefully, I know they sent it to like a bunch of different exchanges. Maybe they'll catch some of it, but they probably won't catch a lot of it, right? So what are you going to do? I guess it just gives you a prime example of someone that's been in the crypto space for over a decade, and wallet security is still an issue. And I think that's one of the things that we also have to solve, right? Is how are you going to get 1 billion people in crypto if we're still writing down 12 seed phrases and we're keeping it, yeah. And that's part of this adoption cycle and some of the things that need to be fixed and changed before we can really kind of.
Maybe this is the narrative. Maybe he, realizes he made a mistake and he's going to move the rest of what he has to PolySign so that he doesn't lose the rest of it.
I'm going to tell him to watch your channel, man. He needs to come see you.
I've never met Chris. I've met Brad. And I've met a lot of people at Ripple, but not ever Chris.
Brad seems like a cool guy, man. That's my dream, to meet that guy one day.
Brad's pretty cool, man. He's as cool as he seems.
Yeah.
Living Atlantic. Here's another good one. You mentioned that JP Morgan tried to buy Ripple in 2017. Do you believe Visa will eventually try to buy Ripple if they feel threatened enough? I mean, Visa and MasterCard have both spoken it as well. I don't think there will be a card company. Ripple's too large at this point to be acquired. In my opinion, and I could definitely be wrong, I don't have a crystal ball. They've talked about being the Amazon of digital assets and basically use case for payments in particular, settlement for banks and institutions. The acquisition of Medico was a big step toward that last year. Max makes a good point here. He says FTC would probably block it with an antitrust. So you need the illusion that these companies are operating independent of one another. Like you've got XLM, right? And you've got Jed that broke off from the founders, and there was supposedly a dispute, and he didn't agree with them keeping that much XRP for the founders. And so he righteously sold his billions of dollars of XRP onto the market for however long he did that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you're not going to have a Visa or MasterCard by Ripple. I mean, Ripple has a vision, like they want to be the biggest blockchain infrastructure company in the world. They are one of the biggest blockchain infrastructure companies in the world, and they're really here to move mountains, right? They're not like, what is it? Wasn't Nami Gupta says we're not here to make a small dent in the world. We're here to.
We will either wither away quietly, or we will make a dent in the universe.
There you go. I mean, that's what they're here to do. They're here to F stuff up, right? They're here to change how we transact, move money, and live our lives with blockchain, right? So that's one of the companies that I just don't think I would love to see Ripple try to make some moves as far as oh God, man, why is my mind blank right now? What is the other company that is I can't believe I'm forgetting this, but what is the other big that they said that's going to use XRP, but R3. I would love to see Ripple try to buy R3. I think that's something that could be kind of cool. I wonder if they've thought about it, right? You would need billions of dollars. I think when I try to do like an evaluation on R3, it's like $3 billion plus whatever they think, it'd be valued at. But, you never know what can happen. But I just don't see a Visa or MasterCard coming to do. I think they want to work with the top dog. I just don't think that, I don't think what could Visa do? I think they would kind of screw it all up, right? I don't think they would. I don't know.
Visa is just payments, and it's cross-border payments. So that's a piece of Ripple's business.
Yeah.
It's obviously the largest piece of their business currently, right? But that's kind of the stepping stone for them. I think they're going to be moving on to significantly larger stepping stones with enterprise adoption and the other things that they'll be able to tackle. We do have one from John Holmes here. Have you heard anything that is going on about PolySign financially? Yes, I have. I work with them on a daily basis. So no impact to our business, no issues. Still, being able to withdraw, deposit, everything there. They have paused onboarding, which is interesting. So hopefully we've got a couple people that started onboarding back in December that should be through the pipe here in the next couple weeks. Some other things I can't say. We talk about it in Mastermind. If you guys want to join the Mastermind, we can talk about it there, but I can't do it on a public forum. But yeah, as far as financially goes, spoken with Jack McDonald a couple times. He was nice enough to call me. Obviously, we have accounts with them, and so made some assurances that things were going to be okay one way or another. Working to resolve things with Boathouse and some of the thing that happened there with them. I will say, I think I can say they didn't miss any payments on the note. So that's not the reason for the problems. But yeah, we'll see. They will make a public disclosure at some point, and it'll be after they've come to a resolution with Boathouse when they do that. And I'm very confident that they will come to an amicable and profitable solution that's good for everybody with Boathouse. So, let's see here. Taco Stand and Medico. Lots of good comments. We're about an hour and a half in here. How long do you want to run, brother?
You tell me, man. I don't know. If people are still awake, maybe we could talk about it, maybe a few more things and wrap up. Totally up to you, man. I mean, I figured we were going an hour and a half. I'll be sleeping on my mic here soon. Come 7:30, man. I'm exhausted. I'm on my computer from like 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. and I start to go blind. So
you and me both, brother. You wake up and you run all day.
All day.
Yeah, I mean, we have some really good questions. Before we do wrap it up, do you guys have anything in particular for Crypto Sensei? Anything else about his community? He's had me on his show twice, which was I'm very grateful for that. I've really enjoyed the conversations we've had in the past. You've always been great at interviewing me, and so I was excited to get you on here and kind of learn a little bit more about you and what you do in the space. So maybe we can end there. can you give people a little background? How did you get in here and
Yeah.
get started doing what you're doing?
So my dad called me one day out of the blue and said, I need you to research XRP. And that was 5 years ago. And I was like, what's
What's that?
XRP? What is this, right? And at the time, I had gone through a lot of medical issues, and I had a surgery that was kind of botched, and I was bedridden for a year and a half, and I was kind of looking to kind of get back into something, and I found crypto, and I don't think I left my house for like 3 months. I just YouTube video, and I was like, oh, I guess I have to start using Twitter. Like I'd never used Twitter before,
Same. Yeah.
and I just got enthralled in it all. I immediately knew that it was going to be impactful. It was going to change the way that we move money, the planet, and I needed to learn every single thing I could as quickly as I could. And I 5 years later, I do the same thing that I did back then every single day, but my dad got me into it. And so he calls me all the time and says, oh, how are things going? And, he watches, some different things, but we have a good conversation. We've had a stronger bond because of crypto, but yeah, he got me into it, and I've never looked back, and I've never been happier. I was selling real estate back then, and I had fun selling real estate, and it was cool to sell real estate and talk with people and tour these $1 million homes, but it really wasn't something I was truly passionate about, something that I really felt like I could make a difference by helping to educate the people around me. And it just took a hold of me, man, and I knew that it was the right place at the right time in my life, and it just gave me a lot more purpose, a lot more drive. Uh, brought me a lot of tears and sadness sometimes. I've lost 7 figures in the market. I've made multiple 7 figures in the market. And so I just found a place where that I could fit in with what I was really interested in, and so it that's all she wrote, man. And every day you wake up and you want to try to make some kind of impact in somebody's life. There's a lot of people in my community that have been with me since I opened the community that I've never met in real life, but I'm very close with some of these people, and they're good researchers, and it's nice to be able to bounce ideas off people, and what do you think about this? And you just form a bond and a friendship, and you find joy in things that you just didn't have any clue about, right? And so I think I was playing a little bit more video games back then. I don't think I've turned my PlayStation on in a long time, and crypto does now take all of my life up, but I wouldn't have it any other way, man. I think it's an ecosystem where I can work really hard for the next several years, and I can live the rest of my life doing whatever else I want. And that was very powerful for me. And I know there's a lot of people that wake up and they go to their job and they hate the people they work with, and they hate what they do, and they're looking for an outlet and something that can change their life. And I think that digital assets is that place. And I've met a lot of really amazing people, and it's just an honor, man, to speak with you, to speak with your audience, to just talk with regular people from all walks of life, and just bond over something. And that's really what makes this space special.
That's the people, man. I would definitely second that and completely agree. Had the privilege to meet a lot of great people. We've got a lot of great people in our community. We are blessed. We do run, in real life IRL events. And so I've had the privilege to meet a lot of those individuals as well, which has been really cool. But, once we have this next bull market and, people do take their profits,
Yeah.
I think that, travel will be a little bit more reasonable for some people. Won't be tied down to the 9 to 5 like you're talking about. So excited for that. But we'll go ahead and wrap it there, man.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Appreciate you. And if you guys, want to check out his community, like he said, he's got 7-day free trial over there. Sounds like for a lot of value to me. I learned a lot of, just on the show tonight about some different projects. So go check it out. And we'll be live again on Wednesdays, and hope you guys have a wonderful evening, wonderful week, and we will see you on the next one.
Thank you, Jake. It's an honor. And thank you for watching, everybody. I really appreciate you.
We'll see you.
Aloha. All right.